Hey again, it's Dr. Fasonic, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the prospectus assignment that you have that's coming up. And in this assignment, this is like your way of explaining to me and to the other people in the class what you're going to do for your final project in here, because we're really like steamrolling into that. So what I'm going to do right now is just do a video of me talking about the assignment the way that I would if you were in the classroom and we had it up on the screen. So if you log into D2L, which you should be if you're clicking on this video, and you go to assignment sheets, you'll find this, and that's all I'm going to do is talk about it. So if you want to refer back to it, you can watch the video again, or you can just simply look at the assignment sheet yourself. So I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I'm going to go over it and then explain some things that I think might be confusing. So in case while you're working on it, you need to refer back to, what did she say, or what did this mean? This might explain some of that. So your work this term will culminate in a final project that will showcase your work and place it in the context of English studies. And so that's why I had you read the Mick Comiskey stuff, and why I'm going to post some summaries this week of some other parts of that book, just to give you an understanding of where we are with English studies and where we were before, where we might be headed, and then how your work fits in with that. So your final project will have two main parts: a critical introduction and the body of the work itself. And I explain those parts actually in a third part down here in the later. So in your actual prospectus, there are three parts. One is the critical introduction. And in this section, you explain how you think your work fits in or doesn't with English studies. Use Mick Comiskey's book and the other assigned book. You are also free to use other scholarly sources as well. In other words, explore how your work fits in, or your work is situated within or not, the subfield of English studies it most easily fits. So think about it from this perspective. So you are creating whatever type of work you are. Well, how does it work? I mean, does it fit neatly in with the subfield of, say, literary studies? Does it fit in with creative writing the best? How does it fit? How does it not fit the way that Mick Comiskey designs it? And I note the other assigned book that we did in here by Ostergaard and the other people, it's the Purple Blue book. And I didn't assign pages from that because we only have about 10 weeks to go over this stuff. In fact, we only have 8 weeks left now. So I really wanted you to have that as a resource, because I hope that you will look at that, look through the table of contents, read some of the pieces in there, and use them as a good source for you to think about how your work fits or doesn't fit within English studies as we've talked about it and as those authors explore it. The next part is an explanation of your original work. So describe the original work you plan to create for your final project. Are you working on a piece of literary scholarship? What's the angle? What's the thesis? What works will you use? In other words, what works will you be studying, and what are some scholarly pieces or takes on that? So say, for example, you were working on, I can mention something that I did years ago. I looked at the Cold War and John Steinbeck's East of Eden and compared it to, interestingly enough, Star Trek, and how those two things worked or didn't work together in terms of the Cold War. And so I used a lot of Marxist scholarship, which made sense at the time, and some other pieces as well, and it really worked out well. So what are some of the pieces of scholarship that you will use if you're doing that, if you're going that direction? Are you polishing some poetry? Are you turning in some nonfiction essays, or longer pieces, shorter pieces, one piece? What have you already done, and so forth? What I need to know is, if you're using a piece that you wrote for another class, how are you changing it to fulfill the requirements for this course? I don't mind you revisiting a piece, but I don't want you simply turning in something that you wrote for another class, for like Dr. Schwartz's class, or for Dr. Wilson's class, or something like that. Make sure that when you're working on this, that your work has something new added to it. You expand it, you turn it around, you start with a new thesis, whatever you think that would make it a different piece of work in the end. But I really don't mind if you've got a kernel of something in like Dr. House's poetry class and you want to expand on it. I'm totally fine with that. And I know both of you, neither of you, as a matter of fact, would be tempted to just simply turn in something you've already done, because I'm sure you know that that's plagiarism and you can't do that. And you're both very smart and very sophisticated people, and I know that you would not do that. So the final part of your prospectus, though, is an explanation of where you think you might publish your work or place your work. And as I say here, in the 21st century, publishing means a million different things than it did before. It's no longer in a paper journal, something that you can hold in your hand, or in a book that's paper that you can hold in your hand, but there's so many different electronic venues that makes publishing a plausible requirement for this course. And what I mean is, if the only venues open to you were like, hand paper magazines or paper journals or something, I could not require you to have this thing published by the end of this course, because it could take, well, I've had a piece out at a journal now for 18 months. It can take months and months and months to get those things published. But for this class, and actually for the purpose that Mick Comiskey describes, which I'll get to in a minute, you could use a blog, you could use a YouTube, you could do an online poetry magazine, and I have lists of some places that publish it with the turnaround being pretty quick. So as you work on that, just let me know. But what Mick Comiskey says, and I said I would return to this later, is this idea that excuse me, that in English studies today, if we are to remain relevant, purposeful, if we are going to survive and keep going, we have to make our work relevant to the general public and usable to the general public. And so as you're thinking about publishing your work, is there a place where you could maybe read your work, or you could present it in some form that would introduce it to the public, as opposed to just keeping it within the confines of the literary English studies academic university setting? And so that's something you need to consider for the final part of this. As for length, I have no idea how long this should be, and I hate to be vague, I know people hate that, but I really want you to represent your work as best as you can in each segment of this, and that could take 3 pages double spaced, it could take 2.5 pages double spaced, it could take 5 pages double spaced, however long you think it needs to be for you to explain to me the critical introduction, how you're going to work that, what you're going to do, your original work, and then publishing your work. So it really is up to you how long this will be, and it doesn't matter to me. I really want to make sure that you are giving me enough to go on so that I can give you some feedback on it and help steer you in the right direction on all 3 areas. If you go back to the course home, I think, no, content. If you go to content, it explains to you in week 3 what's due and when it's due. So the prospectus itself is due June 30th. So that's not this week, but next week. And be sure to post your completed prospectus to the discussion board, which I'll make in a second, and I'll make this a hot link when I am done here. And to the Dropbox, and I will also make that linked as well. And then make sure that you provide feedback on each prospectus, and there's only 2 of you, so take your time doing that. But by July 2nd, that way you'll be done by the 4th, and you won't have to worry about this hanging over your head during that time. So as with anything that you do in this class, or really any of my classes, work on this, and as you work on it, if you have questions, please send me an email. I'll be glad to get back to you right away in any way that I can. You can also ask each other what you think, or if you have a short question, but definitely email me. As both of you should know by now, I get back to you pretty quickly about any questions that you have, and of course this would be no exception. So work on your prospectus. You've got I don't know, like 10 days. Normally in a regular class, I would have been giving you 2.5, 2 weeks or something to work on this, but we don't have that kind of time over the summer. So do your best with this. Help me understand what you're trying to do in terms of where you think it fits, what you're trying to accomplish with your actual work, and then where you think you might get it published. So until I talk to you again, or if you email me and ask me questions, this is Dr. Fasonic, and I'll talk to you later. I hope that you have a great week, and I'll certainly be looking for any emails you might have or any messages that you might send me. So that's it for now. I will talk to you later.